So everybody, I'm Zip. We're going to start in, I think, one more minute or so. I'm in Southern California. I think the furthest away person, I guess it's relative to where you actually are, is Satya. Satya, where are you coming in from and what time is it there?
Great. Oh, I'm joining from India, Bangalore. It is 9:30 p.m.
Ah, okay. So it's 9 o'clock a.m. So what's the future like, Satya? What's my day going to be? Is my day going to be awesome?
If you start from the webinar, then definitely the day gonna be awesome. Fix answering all the webinar questions.
There you go. Thanks.
Interesting.
Thanks. Matt, you're on, right? You're coming in from where?
I'm currently on the East Coast, right outside of Philadelphia.
Ah, beautiful. Okay. So, Geno's or Pat's?
Pat's for me.
Okay. Okay. I totally understand. And if you don't know Geno's or Pat's, then that conversation is not important to you. And Medha, where are you coming in from?
I'm currently in Seattle.
Okay, great. I know Vinay's online, and Vinay, you are in?
Hey, I'm Vinay, based out of Dallas, Texas.
Excellent. Okay, well, I think we've got all the bases covered here, so that's great. And to respect our audience's time, I think we should go ahead and get started. This is a monthly webinar series. My name is Zip. I'm a senior solutions architect on the end user messaging team, which includes our simple email service. And I'm going to be the MC or the host for today's session. And I've got some great experts with me today. I'll introduce them as their sections come up. This is supposed to be interactive. If you have questions, there's a chat somewhere in your user interface, and you can go ahead and type questions into the chat. And we've got some of our colleagues, Vinay and Sam and some other folks are online. They're going to be curating the chat. If you ask a question and you want to make sure we answer it, provide your email address in case we can't get to the answer during the webinar. We'll definitely follow up and try to get an answer directly to you. And good news is that this webinar is being recorded, so we'll be able to post this, and if you want to share it with your colleagues or peers in your industry or elsewhere, please go ahead and do so. So without further ado then, what I'm going to do is go ahead and get started. And let's go to the next slide here. So here are our experts. I've got Matt, Medha, Satya, and myself, and we're going to be talking about email deliverability and trying to demystify and help you improve your delivery success with Amazon's simple email service. So our agenda's pretty clean today. We've got some cautionary tales that Matt is going to tell us about. I don't want to give that too much away, but he's going to share with us some really great examples of some customers that have run into some difficulties and how to avoid those. And then Medha is going to come in from product management and talk to us about some of the deliverability tools that are built right into SES that can help improve your deliverability. Then Satya is going to come online and he's going to give us a demonstration of a one-click unsubscribe mechanism that we've built and posted on GitHub for anybody that would like to use it. And of course, we're going to go into a Q&A session and answer the questions that you have that are either in the chat or you asked before the session. So let's go ahead and get started. And I want to introduce Matt. So Matt, come on in and let's talk a little bit about your background. And then I'm going to turn it over to you, Matt.
Thanks, Zip. My name is Matt Strzelecki. I'm the Senior Deliverability Manager for Amazon SES. I deal with all things deliverability for SES and for our customers with a heavy focus on endpoint deliverability and inbox placement. Today, we're going to talk about a few scenarios that I've seen with senders, some kind of pitfalls that they run into, some of the ways that SES and its features can help out in some of these areas, and then just kind of what to do if some of these things do happen, and then some of the prep work that maybe could go into it to prevent some of these things. Next slide. So we email marketing teams and programs consist of many folks, many working interoperatively with each other, but there are some key areas that we want to focus on. So the first area that we're going to look at is list management and how good subscription management leads to a longer term relationship between the senders and the recipients. So I've seen in the past where as directives from kind of the higher ups and trying to make more money through more conversions, senders will do things like acquire list, buy a list, purchase or purchase a list from a kind of an unknown entity just to try to grow the list size for the kind of previous idea of sending more will get you more conversions, which is not really true, and it's actually quite dangerous. So what can result of somebody going ahead and buying a list is that you could hit spam traps. You could potentially hit a bunch of folks that you've already sent to that may have indicated through complaints or unsubscribes that they no longer want your messages. And if you continue to send to those types of folks, you could get blocklisted, you could get higher complaints, higher bounces, and all of these things will negatively impact your sender reputation. So when you think about list building and list hygiene, you do want to think about the long term and not just a short-term campaign. But when something like that does happen, you will likely have a higher bounce rate, and you will have to deal with that. Things like sender reputation and domain reputation might also be impacted. So it might not just impact this campaign, it could impact campaigns down the line. One of the things that SES will help do, help you with in that scenario would be to have a suppression list. And ideally, you don't send or acquire any kind of list that's not organic and not opt-in. But if somebody on the team may have done that accidentally or purposefully, but not with the consent of everybody else, one of the things that may protect some of that would be a suppression list. So if they had already previously complained or bounced, they would automatically be suppressed from the sending. So that might have helped a little bit, but in the end, you do want to, build organically. You don't want to kind of reach past that organic state of list building and try to acquire lists unorganically. It can lead to disastrous results. Next slide. Oh, Zip, I think you're muted.
The mute's working perfectly, I think, so that's really good news. So this is something that you've seen. It's not something your mom told you to do that's just sort of historical knowledge. We see this all the time, right? The folks try to grow their lists by buying lists or scraping or what have you, and it increases the rate of complaints quite considerably and starts to impact. So that's a good cautionary tale. Let's go to the next one.
I think the next one really is about when you prepare your sending domains for your campaigns, you need to make sure that all of the sending domains are authenticated and aligned. One of the major things that happened this year was the bulk sender requirements, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But effectively, the sending domain that you use needs to align with your DMARC, the friendly from, and then DKIM or SPF. And so oftentimes, if a sender uses a domain or several domains that might not necessarily have all these authentication alignment pieces completed, what can happen is that the end mailbox provider may see this misalignment, may think that you are not who you say you are, you don't have permission to send for that domain, and it's a safeguard against other senders who might try to spoof or phish your domain, and that's why authentication does exist. But if you don't have it on there, you may run into issues where you have throttling, where you have blocked messages as a result of not having those authentication records in there. You might see SMTP responses that actually identify that you're missing a particular record. There are times where you should. There's actually no time where you should actually not use an authenticated domain because you will improve deliverability with authentication alignment. SES does have a feature that can help with some of this alignment visibility. It's called Virtual Deliverability Manager. I'll refer to it as VDM moving forward. And there's a component within VDM called Advisor that does DNS checks, excuse me, for authentication. And so if you have a verified domain within SES, it's doing frequent checks of, does it have a DMARC record associated with it? Does it have DKIM associated? Does it have a custom mail from, which would represent the SPF domain? And it also actually looks at BIMI as well. But this is a quick out-of-the-box feature that can help identify problematic authentication alignment across all of your domains. Especially useful if you are a sender who sends on behalf of, or you have many customers using many different domains. I've seen in the past where customers will accidentally send or purposely send because they don't have the domain alignment, and it will generally result in a mass of bounces, potentially even complaints, because the users will get notifications in their mail client that it's an unauthenticated message, and to be careful. So it could also affect the user experience there. So one thing to always consider is to review, check all authentication for all sending domains. Yeah, and then even if you don't, so I've seen situations where those messages were sent because the sender was not necessarily tracking the events associated with the campaign. They didn't see some of the bounces. A lot of times the bounces will tell you what actually happened. It may say something like, we've blocked your messages because you don't have proper DKIM for the sending domain. And then there's usually a link on how to resolve that. But that's kind of an example of how authentication, lack of authentication can result in higher bounces, higher complaints, and just a general bad recipient experience.
Yeah, thanks. And Matt, so this cautionary tale is to make sure every domain that you're using for sending is properly authenticated with all the DMARC, the DKIM, the SPF, et cetera. And I had seen actually a couple of customers who maybe they brought on new domains, or maybe they're using domains that they don't regularly use, and those domains have not had their DNS fully authenticated, and they wind up with trouble with those particular domains. That's especially true maybe if they're using something from a marketing company and they're sending using a domain that's not normally in use. So use the tools within SES to look up all of your domain information right in VDM, or even up in the Get Started link, and that will give you a good clue as to just how properly authenticated things are. So, okay, so that's a great one. And then our next one.
Yeah, so monitoring your performance and activity, and down to the email service provider, down to the mailbox provider level. So you want to look at overall account performance, and you might see some changes in performance. So if you see an overall account change of deliverability from, let's say, 99% to 90%, it may be specifically one or two or so mailbox providers versus everybody is blocking or potentially bouncing your messages. So you do want to be able to have a view of your sending as an account. You also want to be able to drill into your performance numbers and sending. So I've seen cases where a customer will send a lot of messages or a lot of campaigns throughout the course of, let's say, the summer. And then as the summer kind of winds down, they're noticing that the conversion rate is much lower towards the end of the summer. But a lot of that is a result of they weren't watching their complaints through the early parts of the campaign. They weren't adjusting based on the user feedback they were getting. Some of the domains that they were sending to throughout the campaigns were not authenticated and weren't aligned with the bulk sender requirements. And then even some were using some questionable lists and didn't have features turned on, like the account level suppression list. And as a result of that, they ran into a lot of these bounce and complaint issues. I've also noticed there was a situation where a customer saw a drop in performance and decided to do a follow-up survey. And some of the responses they got back on the survey is, there are items and topics that we are interested in, but you're sending us so much of everything that we just wanted to get out of the loop of that marketing campaign. And so offering customers something like Preference Center, where they can pick and choose and opt in and opt out of certain topics, is a great way to retain a customer and a recipient rather than inundating them with too many marketing messages and having them opt out of the program altogether. And so SES does have a Preference Center feature that will help customers be able to pick and choose what they want to opt into. One of the few things that reporting can also do is you can look at trends. And so one of the examples that we've seen over the summer is with the new implementation or requirements for the one-click unsubscribe, folks who did not have one-click unsubscribe associated with their domain over time, because they didn't have that option, would see higher complaints. And really giving them the ability to, instead of trying to search through a message for a buried unsubscribe link, making it very easy to unsubscribe from a message for most email clients. It's just a better mechanism for giving customers and recipients options on how they want to receive or not receive messages. It could generally lead to lower complaints down the line because you're unsubscribing them rather than getting the complaint.
Cool. Well, if I'm going to wrap up your session in a quick summary, it would be send email to the folks who want to receive your email and send them the topics that they're interested in. Don't flood them. Don't buy lists. Don't over send to your subscribers. Respect the recipients of your emails, and they'll respect you, and you'll get good engagement there. Ensure that you've met all the bulk sender requirements if you're a bulk sender. Even if you're not a bulk sender, it probably makes sense to adhere to those requirements. There's a really good blog post on our messaging blog that talks about the bulk sender requirements, and we've spoken about them, I think, in almost every single webinar that we've done. So go ahead and look at those requirements, and then actively monitor both SES and those external tools from the email service providers. You noted Google Postmaster Tools, Yahoo Sender Hub, etc., to understand exactly what's going on with your sends so you can head off a problem before it becomes damaging to your reputation. So, Matt, thanks an awful lot. I'm going to ask you to stick around because I see we've got a lot of questions coming in directly about deliverability. So if you don't mind, at the end, we'll do Q&A, and I'm sure we'll bring your expertise back in.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Great, thanks. Well, with that, I want to introduce a new member of our webcasting team. So not a new member of SES product management, but this is his first webinar. So Medha, why don't you come on in, and I want to welcome you. And don't worry, the 2 million people that are online are all SES customers. They're all friendly, so nothing to worry about. This is a walk in the park. And you're going to talk to us a little bit about some of the deliverability tools that are built right into SES to help. Matt's mentioned a few of them. You're going to talk a little bit more about them as well, right?
Yep. Thanks, Zip. Some of the important things when we talk about list management and email deliverability is, one, how can you grow your list organically? And two, how are you going to maintain the list hygiene over time? So the blog post that you see on the screen really encapsulates the best practices sending behavior and talks about various things such as keeping the list complaint free, handling unsubscribes, monitoring bounces, and other topics. So definitely read the blog post. Now, let's talk about some of the features that SES provides that can help ensure your email deliverability. The first one is suppression lists. Suppression lists are pretty simple to understand. Let's say you send an email and the email hard bounced. Emails can hard bounce due to various reasons, one of which is invalid recipient. These hard bounces can negatively affect your sender reputation score. So what we do at the SES level is we have a global suppression list, and when an email hard bounces, we take the email address of the bounced email and put it on the global suppression list. This is done to protect the reputation of the SES shared pool. Global suppression list is completely owned and maintained by Amazon SES. Now there's another type of suppression list called account level suppression list. which operates at account level. This is owned and managed by the customer, which means customers will be able to add or remove the addresses from the account level suppression list. Account level suppression list overrides the global suppression list. We understand that some customers require more granularity and control over suppressions. And for those that require such a kind of granularity, there is configuration set level suppression that you can maintain for each configuration set. Overall, suppression lists help maintain sender reputation by making sure the emails are not sent to the invalid recipients or to the ones that have actually complained. It is very important to have the ability to manage your subscriber list and remove those folks who are not interested. Amazon SES provides subscription management features natively, and that can add unsubscribe links to the emails automatically. Subscription management also supports bulk sender requirements from Google and Yahoo. Subscription management is available right out of the box, and if you haven't implemented it, you should definitely take advantage of it. Moving on from the subscription management to one of my favorite topics, Virtual Deliverability Manager. Matt talked about it a little bit at the top of the presentation, and Virtual Deliverability Manager, or in short, VDM, provides a comprehensive view of the sending activity in your SES account. VDM Advisor, a feature in VDM, provides recommendations. Let's say that you brought a new domain identity and you have not properly authenticated it. For example, DMARC not properly aligned or whatnot. As you can see in the screenshot, the top one, you will get recommendations about how to ensure your SES account is properly set up. And then we have something called as VDM dashboard. The dashboard gives a bird's eye view and an overview of what's going on in your account day to day. You can see all the important deliverability metrics, and it's like having an on-demand deliverability consultant right out of the gate. You can see how many emails are sent, how many of those emails are delivered, how many of them are bounced, and how many people actually opened the emails, and more interestingly, how many people clicked on those emails, right? So VDM gives additional metrics, gives individual ISP level metrics down to the message level. So if you ask me who should use VDM, I'd say everyone, every email sender. With that being said, I think I can talk about VDM a lot, but in the interest of time, I'm going to hand this over to you again, Zip.
Thanks, Medha. Yeah, VDM, we've talked about VDM, I think, in every one of our webinars, and we do so for a reason. VDM really has an enormous amount of expertise under the hood that's available to you in these dashboards and in the ability to drill all the way down to an individual message to try to figure out why you're having a deliverability problem. It does a lot of heavy lifting that you could build yourself. But why would you? So VDM does have a small optional cost, but VDM has proven very successful for the customers that have used it. I've spoken to customers that will turn it on and leave it running for a period of time, especially when they're bringing up new domains or they're starting new types of campaigns and they want to keep a really close eye on what's going on. And then once things are running smoothly, they may turn VDM off and no longer incur that small charge. Other customers leave it running all the time because you never know when you might run into trouble, and VDM will be a really good harbinger of something that might be starting to become a problem that you can wrap your arms around and cure quickly before it starts to damage your reputation and cause you deliverability problems. So if you're not familiar with VDM, it's right there in the SES console. You can turn it on and it will start running. And again, you can toggle it on and off if that meets your use case. So thanks a lot, Medhan. I hope we're going to have you often in our webinars. And would you please stick around, because I'm sure we'll have a few questions around the SES tool sets that are available to help customers. So, and with that, I'm going to go all the way to the other side of our planet, for me, not for him, and I'm going to ask Satya if he can join us. And Satya is going to talk a little bit about the one-click unsubscribe functionality that Google and Yahoo pretty much mandated I think it went into effect in June for both of those players. And I think most of the other email service providers are going to adopt that requirement. So Satya, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Hello, guys. I'm Satya. I'm a senior solution architect working with Amazon SES. And typically, I'll just try to make this session pretty much interesting, and we'll dive a little bit deep into the technology side. Just we have been listening a lot about bulk sender requirement, Gmail and Yahoo and all those things. We have done some webinars on that thing as well. But just to touch upon what are those and how they're related to easy unsubscribe or one-click unsubscribe, we'll have to make that story. So typically in Feb 2024, Google and Yahoo to safeguard the inboxes, right, for end users, they created these norms, which is called bulk sender norms. They're mainly categorized into three things. The domain authentication, for example, if you're a bulk sender and you're sending more than 530 emails a month, right, to your end users, then in that case, you have to follow these norms. So one thing is domain authentication, where you have to, as a bulk sender, you have to authenticate your domains using DKIM, DMARC, and SPF authentication. If you're aware about what are these things are, then that is great. If not, we have a lot of documentation and the resources. You'll find these links. There's the first thing. The second thing is monitor spam and complaint rates, because spam is the thing which can demonize the reputation of the customers, right? So that is why it is very important to keep your complaint rate under a certain level, which is 0.3%. So the third one is easy unsubscribe, or typically called as one-click unsubscribe. This is the one we'll dive deep a little bit today, and we're gonna show you a public demo that we have recently published to our end customers for their consumption. So if you just understand what is one-click unsubscribe, right? So you have to as an enterprise or any center, right? It is very important for the customers or the brands to provide easy unsubscribe mechanism, right? If you don't provide that one, then by default customer will make or move the email to a spam box, right? And that will become a spam event, or that is going to be a spam complaint for that customers. And ultimately, if that happens, then the email is going to get into the spam folder, which is going to make the criticality of the importance email to be relevant for the end customers, right? And none of the businesses or none of the customers want to get into that situation. So in those situations, what the actual flow is, here it is on the screen. So the whole flow starts from the email sender. The email sender sends the email to the end users using Amazon SES mail server. The email goes to internet. Then it is gonna go to ESPs like Gmail and Yahoo or anything. They receive the email. They understand whether the email is having some issues or not. If they're fine, then they'll just land those emails to the end user's inbox, right? But understand, once these emails goes to the end user inbox, then there has to be a possibility, or there has to be a option for the end user to unsubscribe it, right? So the end user clicks the unsubscribe functionality or unsubscribe button that you can see on the screen itself. We're gonna just get you to the demo, and we can show it in details over there. But this is the unsubscribe. That is what something looks. And once the end user clicks, the expectation is that they should be removed from that kind of email, or that kind of category of the email that is being sent to them, right? Because either these emails are not required for them or no more relevant for them. And once that is being done, then the expectation is that from the bulk send from the Yahoo and Gmail, right, the source should be updated, and that should not be sent to those kind of emails should not be sent anymore to the end user, right? But understand, a lot of our customers always ask, right, how can we implement this thing? Can you help us out? Or can you just have a mechanism to give us an options to implement this thing? Because you don't want to build something on our own. You are AWS, we are using Amazon SES, you give us something yourself. And that is where this demo comes in, and the blog that we posted recently and GitHub artifact that we posted.
Satya, your audio. Oh, good. Okay. Your audio broke up a little bit there.
Yeah, sorry. Hope I'm audible now.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Great. So I'll just do one thing. I'll just keep it down and I'll just quickly go over to the one of the thing. I'll just start with this flow, where you as an end user or as a brand, you are sending an email to the end user. The intent of this demo is not to show the code or what are the kind of code you write. It is just to give you the basic understanding when you start sending this emails. Then in that case, what exactly you should put for this unsubscribe links to work for your end customers. So these are the two key things where the headers has to be the email headers must contain list unsubscribe and list unsubscribe post. So here either the option can be the brands or the customers, you can provide a link, or it can be a mail to option, and the mail to option was being clicked user, then the workflow should trigger and unsubscribe the end user from those kind of emails, right? So that I'll just start a test and it will just send an email to the end user. It is just mimicking a very very simplistic example, mimicking a brand sending an email to the end user, right, to their end users. So once that is being done, then the next thing is the email is gone, and we intended to keep the email very simplistic so that it is just focus on the unsubscription part. And here, if you see this email come from this URL, which is a sample URL that we have created for the demo, or sample domain, and we just click unsubscribe, it looks something like this. Oh, you want to unsubscribe from support.georgini.ar, right? Then as an end user, I'll just unsubscribe it from there. Then unsubscribe request sent. The expectation is this kind of email should not get to the end user at any point of time. So once that is being done, what happens, right? We just recently looked at the URL that I have shown you, that this internal this kind of URL is nothing but due to the situation where the whole unsubscription mechanism works. We'll go between the tabs for this whole architecture to understand. So this is the architecture we have been talking about. It is publicly available. So what you can do, if you start from the number one, where the email is being sent that we have seen, goes to the end user box, and the end user just unsubscribes, right? Then ultimately it is hitting one API gateway URL, and that API gateway is a Amazon API gateway. It can be anything. If you wish to create your own, you can create your any kind of API gateway using microservices or any other solution that is being there. And once this URL is being clicked, then the ideal of the URL would be, you definitely must provide a hash of the end user rather than putting up the end user email ID or some kind of PII information as a part of this URL, so that it will not really being tampered on the way. Sorry. So once that is being done, then the next thing is there is a hash decoder lambda. What it does is, it is just a simple sample of code that is running. It is just decodes the hash or decrypts the hash and finds who is the end user, and ultimately push that end user in the suppression list of Amazon SES. So you have been hearing from Meda that there is a subscription mechanism or suppression mechanism of Amazon AWS, right? So little tongue twister, subscription and suppression, right? So we have a suppression mechanism in Amazon SES, where you can see if the user unsubscribes using this specific link, right? Then it'll go and push this email ID to the suppression list of Amazon SES, so that next time if the brand or if the customer wants to send any communications to the same user, it will not go through, because SES will suppress that email from being sent again. So this is a ready to deployable architecture, and you can just leverage it as is. And in case the customer wants to save this data into some kind of storage for the future analytics purpose, that who are the users who have unsubscribed, then they can be pushed into this location later for you to consume it. So very simplistic architecture, and it will help you implement this one-click unsubscribe very easily. And it has been there mandated from June. So everybody of our customers, we recommend to our customers to implement it ASAP. So that is it about the demo. I'll just give it back to Jim. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Satya. And just to give a couple of highlights, that is a GitHub sample. So we are linking to it in the materials for the webinar. You'll see that in just a second on the QR codes. And you can go ahead and implement it as is, but you can also, as with any of these samples, go ahead and use it as inspiration but modify it as necessary, maybe to update your own CRM to take that unsubscriber off your main list, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a nice sample, and it's meant for you to use as inspiration. So thanks very much. Now I know that we've got a lot of questions coming in from the audience. We've got some time to answer them. I'm going to hand this over to one of my colleagues to start helping us with Q&A. So Vinay or someone else, would you folks jump in, and we'll go ahead and do some Q&A, some live Q&A.
Yes, thanks, Zip. Hi, everybody. I'm Vinay Ujini. I'm a solutions architect here at AWS. Matt, this is a deliverability question often asked, very common question, which is I'm being blocked by fill up any, like either Google, again, I'm just using this as an example, being blocked by Google or Gmail or Microsoft. How do I get my messages delivered? How could you guide them through this?
Yeah, that's a pretty common deliverability question that'll come up, and I think the most straightforward answer is you go to the Postmaster page if they have one, and most of the big mailbox providers like Gmail and Yahoo and Hotmail, they do have Postmaster pages, and they define what they expect from senders. So a lot of times, a lot of that aligns across the board, but each of those providers will still have their own set of expectations, their own set of filters, their own reputation states for your sending domain. So look at them each individually, but also understand that there is some alignment across them all. So things like making sure your authentication is set up properly, making sure that the lists that you're sending to are active and confirmed opt-in, and making sure you're honoring things like unsubscribes, invalid recipient bounces, so addresses that don't exist, and putting them on your suppression list or just not sending to them, and then honoring complaints. And then using a lot of that feedback to kind of guide how you maintain your list down the line. But then, of course, there's also a component of it that's content related. You also have to make sure your links are good. They don't have anything malicious on there. They're not listed anywhere. And then a lot of the times it's listening to your recipients. So if you are getting certain campaigns that are high in complaints or high in bounces or high in unsubscribes, maybe look at how the list management or segment is being used for that particular campaign, or potentially even the relevancy of that campaign. And so that's also something that you'll want to look at. And one of the reasons why you should have some sort of event monitoring like VDM is that oftentimes when there is a change to deliverability, like all of a sudden Gmail starts blocking my messages, whereas we were successfully sending them before, something could have happened between that time of successful delivery and bounces. And that's likely has to do with a campaign being sent, probably has something to do with the list or potentially even the content, but there's likely an area of focus that you can identify between those areas. And so that's the approach you can generally take for most mailbox providers.
Great. There is a question from Carlos. I'll ask a question and handle it myself. How can I get an account team? Thanks for attendees for joining and participating. This is what makes these sessions really cool. Carlos Cavazos is asking, how can I get an account team to help me on getting the production instance approved? I want to use SES for my website, but with sandbox limitations impossible. Yes, Carlos. So the sandbox is only meant for testing. You can only send emails to approved emails or verified emails. So what you have to do is if you go to your SES link, SES page, there's a page called move to production. And then there you give your reasons why you want to move to production, what you're going to do, how you set up your opt-ins and all that things. And then it'll go through a review process and you'll be approved if everything is correct. Thanks for that. I have two related questions, Matt, for you again. I'm getting 99 or 99 above 99% of my messages being delivered. They're going great out of SES, they're landing, but they're all going to spam folder. How do I get them to inbox? Like help us with inbox placement.
Yeah, that's also a quite common scenario, especially on the marketing side. And so I think again, it's one of those issues where you have to listen to your audience and respect their kind of preferences. And so the short answer of it is make sure that you're sending to people that want your messages and the content is relevant to what they signed up for. And but it's depends on, did it go from it was inboxing well to all of a sudden now it's all going to the spam folder, or did you start out from the spam folder from the get-go and you're just trying to get out of the spam folder? I think both in either situation, you do want to look at your lists, especially and who your target audience is on that list, and make sure that it is relevant, because what the main driver of messages going to the spam folder are recipient responses to those messages. So if you have a high rate of complaints and a low rate of opens and positive engagement numbers, the mailbox provider, let's use Gmail for example, will likely send you the spam folder if the indication is that most of the recipients that are receiving your messages are marking them in a negative way. Then they're going to start using the spam folder placement as kind of a protective mechanism for the rest of the recipients. And so the best way to get out of a situation like that is to look at your list for activity, pare it down to the most active recipients. So maybe that might mean if you're an everyday sender and you send multiple messages a day, and you send to everybody who's ever signed up on your list for the history of your sending, you might want to pare that down to say anybody who's opened or clicked in the past, let's say, you can segment it out the first 30 days, and then 31 to 90 days, and then 91 to 160 days, and then up to a year, and do it in small chunks so you can see the risk reward of those segments. And what you're really trying to prove to get out of that spam folder placement situation is to the mailbox providers that you do have good relationships with their with their customers and their users and your recipients. And a lot of that is by generating positive engagement metrics like opens and clicks and reading the messages and not just deleting them or moving them to the spam folder or even hitting the spam button. And so you really have to front load that high engagement, high likelihood of positively engaging, and then reduce the amount of non-engagement and potentially even those towards the end of your list in terms of engagement who might end up complaining or even escalating it otherwise.
Thank you. Thank you. Really, really helpful and informative, hopefully for everybody as well. Rob is asking from SES's team's perspective, I'll take this and you can add on, Matt. Is using subdomains for certain types of emails like authco.domain.com or support.domain.com, is that beneficial enough across most email hosting platforms to be worth doing? Yes, the answer is yes, and here is why, right? It's not an SES thing or any email platform thing. The reason you want to break it down into subdomains is for one, better control, and two, to also the ability to handle unsubscribes. Now, take an example where your organization, Rob, is sending two types of emails to the same customer or subscriber. So I'm getting an email from your transactional email, which is your orders or password reset or multi-factor authentication or something. While on the other hand, you're probably sending newsletters or marketing or promotional emails and stuff. Now, if you're not separating this by subdomain and don't have granular control, and if you send it through the same one, I, as a subscriber, don't know what I'm unsubscribing to. So when I get a marketing email, let's just say I unsubscribe, I'm basically unsubscribing from your domain and not your subdomain. So next time when you send me a transactional email, there's a good chance I end up in your unsubscribed list and I might not get the email and it'll spiral some challenges. So for a lot of reasons, this is just one example that I've highlighted there. It's always best practice if you're sending different lines of businesses, different types of email, to break them down into subdomains so that you have more granular control. Matt, what are your deliverability thoughts on it?
Yeah, I agree that subdomains do have their own separate domain reputation, and a lot of the reasons to separate into subdomains is to track different business units, different types of sending. I think the most obvious is transactional versus marketing. But even within a marketing organization, like you might want to, you might need to know, there's different departments, and some departments are going to outperform other departments. And that's also where kind of when you break things down and drill down further and further, you're likely going to uncover something else. So like if you were to have, just sending all your marketing messages under subdomain domain, you might see some performance gaps. But if you then also were to break it down into, let's say, you're a sporting goods store and you say, football dot subdomain dot domain and baseball, and so you might get different performance numbers for different different categories. So it's also another way to possibly set up easier monitoring and reporting, and then also potentially separating maybe a riskier type of marketing message from more of a standard, like everyday type of marketing reach out.
One of the other questions is a very common question, and Sergio, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, has this question which could help a lot of our viewers and listeners is there any recommended way to reduce bounce rate? They are standard ones, like for example, Matt already highlighted, right? Email to specifically people that have opted in, have a clean email list. For example, one of the in his presentation, Matt highlighted that if in this example, Dave was sending out emails, but somebody ran an entire list and gave it to them, that list was not scrubbed against suppressions. It had some emails that either were unsubscribed or emails did not exist. There are multiple things you could do to reduce your bounce rate. The biggest thing is monitoring, right? So if you're wondering, Sergio is like, well, how does monitoring help me reduce the rate? Monitoring only tells me the number, but it also educates you or the sender as to, is it your content? Is it the email? For example, if you monitor and you realize an email has gone to abc@xyz.com, well, xyz.com doesn't exist, so it's gone. So the mailbox is probably thinking, okay, this is an obvious one because it doesn't exist. They have checked this already and it's bouncing. So there are multiple things you can do: monitoring, checking the cleanliness of your list. Where are you procuring the list from? And sometimes, as somebody in IT or somebody in marketing, you don't know where the list is being procured from. Understand if it's third-party list, and keeping clean list, monitoring it, having great content, making sure your IPs are warmed and everything. Again, all the best practices that we talked about. If you go to the SES page, you could see there's a list of best practices there. I'll try to post it here. Anything else, Matt, that you would like to add to Sergio's question of what you recommend?
Yeah, it further emphasizes the need for confirmed opt-in, right? So when you're collecting addresses, having people just sign up directly to a form and then adding them to your production sending list or whatever your marketing list is also a way that you can generate a lot of bounces. Number one, it could be that somebody else just inputted an email address and the actual email owner did not actually want to be signed up. That's one major reason that can happen, or one major reason why you want to do the confirmed opt-in. The second is to validate that the address actually does exist. So you want to do a sign-up validation. So when they do submit the form to sign up, you send them an email to click here to confirm. You'll know if you send it to them at that point and it bounces that it's not a good email address, and you don't have to put it on your mailing, your active mailing list. And so confirming the address.
Matt, is are SPF, DKIM, DMARC all required to successfully send email? A lot of users understand the importance of email protocols. There was another user, this question has been asked at least twice here already, is if I have DKIM and DMARC set up and if I don't have SPF. So can you highlight from your years of deliverability experience for our users here, on the importance of, are all required? Is it all or nothing? Any circumstances that it's okay to skip SPF specifically?
Well, it depends on who you're trying to reach out to. So if you're trying to reach Gmail users and Yahoo users and Hotmail users and some of the larger mailbox providers, they do require authentication, and a lot of that is defined in the bulk sender requirements alignment. And so the minimum right now for those types of mailbox providers are that you have a DMARC record, and that you have one of either SPF or DKIM aligning with that friendly from and the DMARC record. And so within SES, it's typically the DMARC record alignment is with the DKIM record that for the domain verified identity. You can also add the custom mail from, which will set up your SPF domain to align with that domain as well. But out of the as a default, we will use the default AmazonSCS.com domain for SPF. So SPF is also always going to pass, whether it aligns with DMARC or not, and how you have your DMARC alignment for the domain set up will kind of dictate how messages get placed. But I would say that it is a very good idea to make it a habit of having authentication alignment across all sending domains, because even though there are certain recipient domains that will still accept messages that are unauthenticated, the likelihood is that the shift to a higher security model will eventually happen. And I think it's a good time to kind of discuss or just quickly mention that a lot of what the authentication does is it prevents bad users from targeting recipients and spoofing them and phishing them and potentially sending them malicious messages. And it gives the mailbox provider signals that this sender is who they say they are. They own the domain. They're unlikely to be a malicious sender. And so that is a large reason why these authentication protocols exist. And it's also to protect the sender, not only the recipient, but also the sender.
Thank you. Zip, if you can move to the feedback page here. I have one last question. We have time for one last thing, which is somebody was asking, what is the best recommendation, like when to use shared or dedicated IPs? Matt, do you have a quick 1 to 2 minute answer on when they could use them, or when to use what?
Yeah, I think ideally you always want to separate out and be on your own dedicated IP space, because you do want to kind of separate yourself from potentially noisy neighbors within the IP pool. That being said, there's also some benefits of being in a shared pool, and those include things like high scalability, being able to send peaky and spiky traffic because the IPs have established volume on them. And with domain reputation taking such a driver's seat in the reputation world, there are times where, you know, in a shared pool you'll still be enforced or treated individually based on your domain, despite the IP reputation. But there is still an IP component. So, for instance, if you were to get publicly listed on, say, Spamhaus, in a shared pool, every sender on that's using that shared pool, that particular IP that got listed publicly on a site like Spamhaus, could potentially render all deliverability to some major mailbox providers for everybody sending on that IP. So that's why there are times where you want to try to avoid noisy neighbors, but there are use cases for shared, and that would be kind of spiky sending, kind of large volume batch sending, kind of low cadence sending. So like if you're sending, for vacations every 6 months or something, or cruise lines every 6 to 12 months, that might, but you have a large volume of sends that you do when you do those campaigns, that might be better left for shared. Also, a good a good split of that would typically be for marketing and transactional. Transactional traffic typically does very well, and you never want to risk transactional traffic as a result of somebody doing something on the marketing side. So putting your transactional traffic on a dedicated IP is always a good idea to separate that out. So those are the major use cases that I would consider for each of those types.
Thank you so much, Matt, Zip, Satya, Meda. On the background, we have deliverability engineers and PMs, Jesse, Sam, everybody for all your help in running this. And big thanks to all the attendees. I know it's unfortunate we got a lot of awesome questions. Due to limited time, we could only get to some of them. Hopefully we'll get to all of them next time. And please do check out our blogs and our latest on the SES page. We keep adding links to these webinars, YouTube videos, and yeah, there are quite a few resources. We're always blogging, adding more information based on your feedback and questions. So thank you so much, everybody, for attending.